So what happens when the person you love just fails to live up to the flawless, heroic ideal you've built for them? Like when the shining armor suddenly cracks and you're forced to look at a fragile, frightened, totally normal mortal?
Right. It's a terrifying question.
It really is.
Yeah.
Do you love the human being actually standing in front of you, or do you only love the pedestal you put them on?
Yeah. I mean, pedestals by their very nature are, precarious. They're unforgiving constructs that just leave absolutely no room for the messy, flawed reality of simply being human.
Exactly.
And when that idealized image shatters, because it inevitably does, the psychological fallout isn't just mild disappointment. It can be completely destructive to everyone involved.
And that brutal collision between romantic ideal and human reality is exactly what we're exploring today. Welcome, learner, to your custom-tailored deep dive. We are so thrilled to have you with us.
We really are.
And hey, really quickly, if you are listening to this full summary on the Simplified Summary YouTube channel, please do us a huge favor and subscribe. Don't forget to like this video and share your valuable comments down below. We love hearing from you guys.
Definitely. Your comments always give us great stuff to think about.
For sure. So today our mission is to focus entirely on one incredibly powerful, really haunting narrative from Munshi Premchand's classic Hindi literary collection, Mansarovar Part 5. We are breaking down the gripping short story titled Sati.
Yeah, and we're navigating a highly intense tale today, learner. It weaves together romance, martial duty, and this tremendously rigid cultural code of honor.
Right.
Premchand is basically taking the historical practice of Sati, which was the ancient, highly controversial custom of a widow throwing herself onto her husband's funeral pyre, and he is weaponizing it here as a psychological metaphor.
Yeah.
He's looking at the horrific reality of the pyre and asking, what kind of internal ideological fanaticism actually drives a person to strike the match?
Right, and we should be crystal clear right out of the gate here. We are examining this story completely impartially.
Absolutely.
We're looking at this practice solely as a historical and literary device that Premchand used to explore human psychology, extreme societal expectations, and, well, the really dark side of romantic idealism. We are absolutely not endorsing the practice itself.
No, not at all. It's crucial to separate the literary analysis from any kind of endorsement.
Okay, let's unpack this. To really grasp the psychological weight of this story, we need to dive straight into the mind of our protagonist, Chinta Devi. And she is definitely not your typical romantic lead just waiting around in a tower.
Far from it. She is a fierce Bundela warrior.
Yeah.
For 5 years, her fame is spread across the province. She is literally the living embodiment of victory. She fights on the front lines, inspires his soldiers, and just strikes absolute terror into her enemies.
And her stoicism is legendary, right? I mean, Premchand establishes her emotional baseline super early on. He notes that when her own father died, she refused to shed a single tear.
Which is wild.
Right. She operates in this world of supreme emotional control, where showing any vulnerability is just a fatal flaw.
Yeah, which makes the inciting incident of the story so utterly bizarre.
Seriously. Premchand writes this incredibly vivid, almost gruesome scene. The battle has paused, and Chinta is walking the blood-soaked grounds.
Just surveying the aftermath.
Yeah, and she finds 4 men lying in the dirt. 3 of them are dead enemies, but one of them, this man named Ratnasingh, is barely breathing. And it turns out he had been defending her.
You took the hits for her.
Exactly. And here, this legendary stoic simply breaks. She bursts into tears for a wounded soldier, places his bloodied head on her lap, and literally puts a garland around his neck.
Which is a huge deal in this context.
It's one hell of a first date, honestly. I mean, you're walking among corpses and suddenly decide, well, the guy bleeding out on my boots is husband material. It's like the ultimate extreme of the I can fix him trope.
It really is. Spontaneously choosing him as her husband by placing that garland over his neck right there in the dirt, that is a massive escalation. She takes him back to the fort and nurses him personally for an entire month. She completely refuses to leave his side.
And when Ratnasingh finally wakes up and realizes he is being nursed by this mythic commander, he's just overwhelmed. He essentially tells her that he didn't do any penance to deserve a reward like this.
Can't believe it.
But Chinta counters him. She states that because he risked his life to protect a woman, he has made the ultimate sacrifice. And then she drops a bombshell. She reveals that she had actually taken a sacred vow of lifelong celibacy.
Right, she was a brahmacharini.
Yes, but his bravery was so profound that it broke her vow.
Hmm.
She explicitly tells him she despises superficial lovers who just talk a good game. She only values true, selfless courage.
What's fascinating here is the foundation she is laying for this relationship.
Oh, totally.
It isn't based on, a slow buildup of interpersonal affection or shared jokes or really any mutual understanding at all.
Mhm.
It is based entirely on a rigid ideological standard.
Right, he ticked the box.
Exactly. Ratnasingh's physical wounds serve as the ultimate undeniable proof of his character to her. In a world full of cheap talk, his bleeding body is a literal receipt of his valor.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on that reading just a little bit.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, how does a battle-hardened lioness who literally leads armies fall so completely and suddenly for a guy just because he's wounded? She has spent 5 years on the front lines.
That's true. She's seen it all.
Right. She has seen hundreds, probably thousands, of brave men die gruesome deaths. So why him? Why then? I just don't buy that it's purely about his bravery. There has to be an element of sheer ego here. He was defending her.
Well, the ego certainly plays a role in her God complex, I'll
Yeah.
give you that. But consider the psychological utility of his sacrifice for her worldview.
Okay, what do you mean?
She doesn't fall for his personality.
Not.
I mean, she doesn't even know it yet. She falls for his ideology. He has become the physical avatar of the martial honor she worships.
No, I see.
By defending the invincible commander, he elevated himself to a mythological status in her eyes. Chinta loves the concept of a fearless hero far more than she actually loves the flesh and blood man lying in that bed.
That makes a lot of sense. But, holding on to an abstract ideology is pretty easy when you're the one winning the battles and making the rules.
Right. It's easy in peacetime. Well, relative peacetime.
Exactly. The real stress test for Chinta's conditional love comes the very night of their wedding. The abstract concept of war suddenly just knocks right on their bedroom door.
Talk about terrible timing.
I know. The wedding pavilion is set up, the romance is at its peak, and instantly the intimacy is shattered. News arrives that the Maratha enemies are attacking their fort.
And the timing forces an immediate confrontation between her two identities. Ratnasingh doesn't even hesitate, right?
Yeah.
He grabs his gun and his sword.
Yeah.
Chinta, acting on her 5 years of frontline instinct, wants to grab her weapons and fight right alongside him. But Ratnasingh insists on going out alone to prove himself. He promises her he'll rout the enemy and return by morning.
And here we witness this massive, almost jarring psychological shift. I mean, here's where it gets really interesting. This is a woman who usually roars like a lioness to terrify her enemies.
She's a force of nature.
Right. But suddenly, as she watches her husband leave, she feels weak, she feels fearful. Premchand explicitly writes that for the very first time in her life, her naratva, her womanhood and wifely devotion, completely overpowers her warrior instincts.
It's a total 180.
It is. She actually makes him promise to be careful and not be reckless.
I mean, telling a soldier on his way to an ambush not to be reckless is a staggering contradiction for a legendary general.
Right. It's like a superhero voluntarily giving up their powers because they suddenly have something to lose. It's almost like the psychological phenomenon of the glass cliff, but applied to her emotional state.
That's a great way to put it.
She spent her entire adult life in survival mode, where vulnerability basically equals death. The moment she allows herself to love and be loved, she suddenly realizes she has a massive emotional blind spot.
Yeah, she doesn't just feel fear for his physical safety. She feels the terrifying weight of suddenly having a future to lose.
Exactly. She climbs to the highest tower of the fort, watches him ride out until he disappears behind the distant trees, and then just goes back to her bed and weeps.
Premchand is executing a brilliant maneuver here. He's exposing how deep romantic attachment creates profound vulnerability.
Yeah, it strips her armor away.
Completely.
Yeah.
Chinta has always maintained this public identity as a stoic, invincible warrior. Now, that public identity is violently colliding with her private identity as a devoted partner.
Right.
When you have nothing to lose, bravery is a relatively simple calculus. But when your entire world is riding away on a horse toward an advancing army,
The math changes.
the calculus changes entirely, and bravery is just replaced by dread.
Her stakes have shifted from the collective survival of her province to the singular survival of her husband. And that newfound emotional frailty just perfectly sets the stage for the devastation that comes next.
The other shoe drops.
It drops hard. Evening falls on the fort. Chinta is waiting. Her nerves are completely frayed. And then a lone, unarmed soldier returns to the fort. Just one.
Oh.
He delivers the crushing blow. He tells her, "No one survived. The Marathas are approaching."
And the psychological floor just completely drops out from under her.
The surviving soldier urges her to lock the massive gates of the fort. He points out they have the provisions to endure a months-long siege.
Which is the logical commander thing to do.
Right. But Chinta refuses. She just looks at him and says, "My fight is with no one now."
Her reaction defies every single instinct she displayed in the first half of the story.
So what does this all mean, learner? Put yourself in her shoes for a second. She is still a brilliant military commander. She has a fortified castle.
She has an army inside.
Yes. She could avenge him. She could lead her troops to victory in his name, turning his death into a rallying cry. But instead, she orders a funeral pyre to be built immediately.
It's so dark.
She doesn't put on her armor. She dresses in her bridal best, the sola shringar, the 16 adornments. She prepares to walk into the fire with a joyful face, fully believing she is going to join her heroic, martyred husband in the afterlife.
It's a complete shift in reality for her.
And Premchand highlights an incredibly dark spatial irony here. The funeral pyre is built in the exact same courtyard where their wedding pavilion stood just the day before.
The site of her greatest joy becoming the site of her final exit within 24 hours. It is just a masterclass in tragic pacing.
Truly.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, look at the underlying sociology of her decision. In the strict, unforgiving cultural code of the Rajput era, joining her heroic husband in death isn't interpreted as a surrender.
How interesting.
It is actively constructed as her final, ultimate victory. Her transformation is complete. Her identity as Ratnasingh's wife has entirely eclipsed her identity as a Bundela warrior.
Wow. So she is essentially matching his sacrifice point for point. He died for honor on the blood-soaked battlefield, so she will die for honor on the scorching pyre. It's a flawless, albeit terrifying, symmetry in her mind.
She has achieved a grim, absolute peace with it. The world without the avatar of her ideals holds zero value to her anymore.
Right.
And then the narrative builds to this intense sensory crescendo. The pyre is built, the flames are roaring, casting these huge shadows against the stone walls.
I can picture it perfectly.
The entire fortress is gathered around, just watching this solemn spectacle. Chinta is walking toward the fire, fully adorned, deeply committed to her fate.
And then the climax absolutely shatters the solemnity. Over the loud crackle of the burning wood, the crowd hears the frantic sound of horse hooves.
Here we go.
A rider bursts into the courtyard. He's panting, desperate, covered in the dust of retreat. It's Ratnasingh.
It is the ultimate subversion of the romantic reunion trope, because he isn't dead.
Right. He cries out to her, "Stop, I am alive." Now, in any standard romance, this is the moment of ultimate relief.
The music swells, they hug.
Exactly. The husband has returned from the dead. The tragedy is averted, but Chinta's reaction is chilling. It is ice cold.
So cold.
She refuses to even look at him. As he runs toward her, she simply raises a hand and motions for him to step back.
She doesn't embrace the man she wept over just hours before. She stops him right in his tracks.
And then, speaking through the intense heat of the flames, she delivers one of the most devastating lines in literature. She says, "You are not my Ratnasingh. My husband was a brave Rajput, not a coward who flees the battlefield."
Oh, man.
And with those words, she steps directly into the fire and is consumed.
The rejection is just breathtaking in its cruelty.
It's deeply shocking. She actively chose to burn alive rather than accept the living, breathing, flawed man who actually made it back to her.
Yeah, she chose death over a flawed husband.
And Ratnasingh is just left standing in the courtyard, completely dumbfounded. He is utterly shattered by his own shame and her extremely public rejection.
He lost everything in a matter of seconds.
So he takes a deep breath and he jumps into the roaring fire after her.
This raises an important question, right? We have to unpack the cognitive dissonance happening in Chinta Devi's mind in those final seconds.
Let's do it.
Think about the sheer weight of her ego. She broke a lifelong sacred vow of celibacy for this man. She convinced herself and her entire army that he was the flawless embodiment of martial honor.
Right, she bet everything on him.
Exactly. So when Ratnasingh fled the battlefield, when he prioritized his biological survival over his abstract honor, he presented her with a reality that conflicted entirely with her myth.
Because acknowledging that he is a coward would mean acknowledging that she made a colossal, embarrassing mistake.
Precisely the mechanism at play. To resolve that massive cognitive dissonance and protect her ego, she has to reject reality entirely.
So the physical man who rode back was literally an imposter to her ideals.
Yes. To her, the true Ratnasingh died on the battlefield the moment his courage broke. She chooses to burn alive because updating her worldview to accommodate human frailty is just more painful to her than the actual flames.
That is so intense. The man standing in the courtyard wasn't the myth she married. It was just a guy who got scared and ran away so he could come back to his wife.
Yeah.
And Ratnasingh's final, tragic act of jumping into the fire. It isn't some romantic Romeo and Juliet suicide, is it?
Far from it. It is his desperate final attempt to reclaim the honor she demanded of him.
Right.
He realizes the only way to be worthy of her, the only way to become the idealized Ratnasingh she loved, is to die. He understands he cannot live with her in shame, but he can die with her to prove he belongs on that pedestal.
It's a haunting realization. Premchand isn't just writing a historical tragedy here. He is issuing a dire warning about the danger of loving an ideal more than a person. Sati in this story isn't just a cultural practice. It really represents the destructive fire of perfectionism.
It challenges us to ask whether our own attachments are resilient enough to handle human frailty, or if they are just as rigid and fragile as the societal codes that drove Chinta Devi and Ratnasingh to their graves.
And that brings us to a fascinating, somewhat unsettling application for you, learner. This deep dive forces us to look in the mirror, sure, but it also makes you wonder about how we treat public figures today.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about the modern phenomenon of cancel culture and massive public pile-ons. We elevate celebrities, leaders, and influencers onto these massive cultural pedestals. We demand they be flawless avatars of whatever ideology we project onto them.
You build the myth, just like Chinta Devi built the myth of the invincible Rajput warrior.
Exactly, and when that beloved figure inevitably makes a very human mistake, when they show fear or say the wrong thing or reveal a crack in the armor, the public backlash is instantaneous and entirely destructive.
It's brutal.
Are our modern digital pylons just the 21st century equivalent of Chinta Devi's funeral pyre? Do we demand that our heroes socially and professionally burn the exact moment their human frailty shows, simply because we cannot handle the cognitive dissonance of them being flawed mortals?
It's a profound parallel. The pyre may have gone digital, but the human impulse to destroy the reality that fails our ideals remains completely intact.
So as you go about your day, learner, mull that over. Notice the pedestals you build for the people in your life and the public figures on your screens. Are you leaving room for the messy reality of the human being, or are you just gathering wood for the pyre?
That is definitely something to think about.
Thank you for joining us on this custom-tailored journey, learner. Keep questioning the stories you read, the histories you uncover, and the ideals you hold. Until next time.